Good morning and welcome to our February Town Hall on this snowy Thursday morning. I remind you every month that as long as this meeting is providing value to you, we will continue to host them. Today we have more than 450 of you in attendance today, so it appears we'll keep hosting these town halls regularly each month for you. My name is Chris Valentine. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Marketing Communications here at UCCS, and I'll be your moderator for today's town hall. Let me share a quick overview of what we're going to do over the next hour. So we've heard from many of you that the town halls were getting a little bit repetitive. You're hearing the same information month after month. So we decided we'd change it up the format just a little bit this month to hopefully provide some new information for you. As always, Chancellor Reddy will start off our show this morning with a short campus update. From there, we're going to have a nice presentation on wellness and resilience with Dr. Benight. He will share some tips and tools that we can all use as we continue to make our way through this pandemic. And then we'll end the show with a Q&A session with Dr. Benight. If you're tuning in this morning and have a general campus question that is not related to Dr. Benight's presentation, we encourage you to still submit your question. We'll address them if time permits. We'll include answers to the frequently asked questions in tomorrow's communique if we're not able to get to them during today's live show. If we don't cover your question in one of those ways, we'll respond to you directly if you provide your contact information in the chat. So on the bottom of your screen, there is a link. So as you're listening to Dr. Benight's presentation, I encourage you to submit your questions and we'll get to as many of those as we can. We did receive some pre-submitted questions and the Chancellor will address those in his remarks. And as always, ask for your patience with any technology challenges. If we freeze up, we'll do our best to get back live as quick as possible. So thank you for your patience on that in advance. So with that, I'd like to introduce Chancellor Reddy. Chancellor, take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me for our virtual February Town Hall. I'd like to give a special welcome to Regents Renison, Spiegel, and Chavez, as well as CU Senior Vice President Leonard Diniger. Thank you so much for joining us. Regents, our entire team appreciated you taking the time to visit with a number of us over Zoom yesterday to learn more about UCCS. We really appreciate your commitment and encouragement. Today, we have a special focus on a topic that's been on the top of all of our minds, health and wellness. The majority of our time will be spent with Dr. Benight, Director of the Lyra Hill Institute for Human Resilience. But first, allow me to give you a few updates across the campus. I'm feeling very optimistic and encouraged as I look out into the horizon that better days are ahead of us. As Provost Tom Christensen shared with the campus on Tuesday, we expect social distancing requirements to be more relaxed or even eliminated by the time the fall semester begins. The number of cases in El Paso County and the state of Colorado continue to decline. Vaccine supplies are increasing. These anticipated changes give us considerably more flexibility in planning fall semester classes. We anticipate many more classes to be offered in person compared to last fall, and we should also see an increase in other activities on the campus. Given the anticipated numbers, I want you to know our May 14th commencement will again be virtual. However, we are planning an additional on-campus photo event for our graduates the following week. An official announcement will be released this week, and follow-up communication on the format and other details will be distributed in the coming weeks. I'm very pleased to share that we have been approved to become a POD, or Point of Dispensing Site, and will be able to distribute vaccines at the Gallagher Recreation and Wellness Center when they become available to the campus population. In addition, we're now offering drive-up COVID-19 testing appointments at the Lane Center for faculty and staff who are not showing symptoms. If you are showing symptoms, please work with your healthcare provider. You can learn more using the link below. Now that we have expanded testing capacity, we're also conducting COVID-19 tests on a random sample of students living on campus each week. This is all in line with our efforts to make the return to in-person learning as safe as possible. Equally important to campus is our work on equity, diversity, and inclusion. As I shared with campus earlier this week, I worked with Dr. Stephanie Rose Spalding in assembling an EDI task force comprising of faculty, staff, and students. The task force, chaired by Dr. Spalding, will assess our most immediate EDI needs and concerns, advise me and the cabinet on the use of funds provided by the president, and help with the EDI office structure and the search process. The Colorado Equal Pay for Equal Work Act went into effect on January 1st of this year. UCCS has already implemented the required job posting and hiring measures. We are engaged in a CU system-wide review of compensation practices to comply with the Act. Please know that it'll take several months to review these findings on an individual basis. Answers to frequently asked questions regarding the Act are available on the HR website. Now, allow me to share a few items that we can all celebrate. First, I'm very pleased to announce that UCCS will receive nearly $4 million in federal emergency aid. This funding will be used for grant monies to assist students who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We also expect to receive more federal funds, and we are working towards that in coalition with the CU system. I'm also proud to announce that UCCS just named the #3 most military-friendly among large public universities in the 2021 Military-Friendly Schools ranking. If you recall, last year we were ranked #5. I'm glad we are moving in the right direction. Each of you play a part in creating a culture that's welcoming to all military-affiliated members of our community. Thank you. And a special thank you and a shout out to the Office of Veteran and Military Affairs for their hard work. In other good news, the Board of Regents approved a new bachelor's degree in early childhood education. Thank you, Regents. We'll soon be welcoming the next dean of the Kramer Family Library, Seth Potter. He will be coming to us from Princeton University and will join the UCCS community beginning April 26th. Welcome, Seth. Finally, in recognition of the challenge grant that made it possible, the National Institute of Human Resilience has been formally renamed the Lyda Hill Institute for Human Resilience earlier this month. The impact of the Hill Institute will be felt not only on our campus community, but around the world. Only yesterday, I had the pleasure of participating in the painting party organized by our staff association to promote health and wellness. This is just one example of how our campus community is trying to stay together during these challenging times. In just a moment, Dr. Benight will share more steps that you can take to safeguard your health and wellness and promote your own resilience and the resilience of others. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Chip Benight. Chip, please take it away.
Thank you, Venkat. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone this morning. And I wanted to start today with a interesting video that I think captures the year that we've all just gone through and the challenges we faced with the pandemic. And I think it's important at certain stages to bring levity to our experiences because I know and we all know that there's been a lot of challenges, pain, suffering, and just really a difficult year. But this first video, I think, can get us started this morning. So take it away, Angie.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to
we're trying to. Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
So, Angie, I'm not sure. Was the sound available on that video? I just want to double check so we make sure we've got things working. Chris?
Yes, Chip, the sound was working, so everybody heard it but us.
Oh, okay. All right, good, great. So that wasn't super smooth on my side, but that's obviously time for levity. So the second video, I think, is important for us to see because we need, as we move through the pandemic and we're moving towards the vaccine being out and everything else, there's hope at the light of the end of the tunnel. So, but before the pandemic, we also had situations that weren't always easy. This next video sort of displays that in terms of getting a kind of a bad haircut. So obviously, we've all had some different kinds of haircuts. I hadn't had that one before, but so moving forward, I want to talk today about the Institute first and foremost and what we're about, and then move into more specifics around understanding the impact of the pandemic on our community, and then also what we can do both individually and collectively to help us get through the final stages of adapting to what's been happening to us and where we move forward with the vaccine and so forth. So the Lyda Hill Institute for Human Resilience is based at UCCS and has three components within the Institute. On the left side, we have trauma innovative care. We started our clinic in 2014 based on some funding from Lyda Hill at that point. And we've been serving, speaking of military, as the Chancellor mentioned, we've been serving military and first responders and other trauma survivors since 2014. We're currently in the process of innovating our care model and looking at alternatives to create a situation where we can break down some of the barriers that still exist in terms of people who've been traumatized getting care. We also have basic and clinical research that we're doing with cross-disciplinary faculty, both here at UCCS, as well as faculty affiliates from all over the world. And thirdly, we're doing community empowerment and training. For example, we currently are running a peer support program to support trauma exposure in the Colorado Department of Transportation, and we're now launching a similar program at the UC Health Memorial System, and we have several other clients that we're working with, Lincoln Surgery Center and some others. And what you see by this picture here, this slide, is that all of these factors interact with each other and help us to create the most effective institute that we can that can have both local, regional, and national impact. So you can see that we really go all the way from prevention to response to recovery. Oops. So the interesting thing to think about with the pandemic that I wanted to bring up is it's been a different type of disaster than any of us have been exposed to before. Most of us anyway, 99% of us. But it's very similar to some research that I found on 3 Mile Island, the nuclear meltdown. So you might ask, wow, how could that be related? Well, interestingly, it is related in the sense that a technological disaster like a nuclear meltdown, the issue is radioactivity that is something you can't see, smell, taste. And in similar way, the virus is also such a stressor, is that it's very ambiguous. You don't know when you're around it, and it creates a lot of anticipatory stress. And a study that came out a long time ago with a disaster that was actually in, I think it was Brazil, demonstrated that anticipatory stress was associated with potential exposure to radiation, resulting in a level of stress similar to actually being exposed to the radiation. So what we know is that when something is ambiguous and threatening, it creates a lot of anticipatory stress. And I think we can all, at least I can, and everybody I've talked to will resonate with that idea that we've definitely been going through this underlying anticipatory stress, anxiety for over a year now, and it's created a lot of challenges for all of us. I did a survey with some colleagues in town here with the Department of Public Health, and we did this right at the end of November and into December. And so that gives you, that was when we were hitting that next spike that we had. And what we found, which is quite important for us, is that locally, we have 25% of our sample of 532 people. So the mean of that sample was 23 on the post-traumatic stress symptoms, but 25% of that sample was actually showing probable PTSD, and 26% were showing severe or moderately severe or severe depression. When we compare that, for example, the mean from the Wuhan, China sample that came out pretty early after the pandemic started, their mean for PTSD was only 13.7. So we see that, I think what we're seeing here is the impact of the pandemic and going through several spikes and the challenges we've had in our community. And it's not only just post-traumatic stress and depression, we also did an assessment of loneliness. And interestingly, about 64% of our sample showed significant loneliness. And this was higher than a study that was done in UCLA area, LA region early into the pandemic, which showed a loneliness of 43.8 on the UCLA mean loneliness scale, compared to ours, which was at 50.74. So the El Paso County is showing significant distress and loneliness in this process. And why is that? Well, there's several factors here that I think we want to think about as a community, and that is that people have been struggling with several of these factors, such as frontal lobe fatigue. What is that? Well, in the pandemic, what's happened is we've all had to adapt and change in ways that we just have never had to do before. And now it may seem a little bit old hat, a little bit more routine, but in fact, we can easily look at our strategies and what we have to do on a daily basis that still is not what we would do normally. For example, all of us can relate to leaving the house and going to run an errand of some sort, and you forgot a mask, for example. You know, that's an example of, I just don't have that as automatic at this point. Sleep disruption is a common problem. I've done support groups for a lot of different constituents in the last year, and uniformly, sleep disruption is a big issue for people. What's happening is they're either struggling to get to sleep, waking up, having thoughts of anxiety running through their minds and so forth. And this creates this cycle of exhaustion and then more sleep problems and more exhaustion, which can create work challenges, burnout, and other issues. So sleep disruptions have been a big issue for people. Chronic anxiety and fear, as I just mentioned, loss and grief. A lot of people have gone through significant losses, whether it's an economic loss. You probably have friends or acquaintances that have lost jobs. We also have people who've lost loved ones. And so it's clearly been a year with that kind of challenge. And the complete life disruption, as we know it, has had a huge effect for people. So pandemic stress is something that's real. It creates family stress dynamics that are difficult when kids are being taught remotely. Other challenges from working at home, work-life balance becomes a big challenge. And that's where we've been for the last year. So we can all relate to this sort of picture of stress, and that we've been very stressed for a year. And if you were to say what would be a significant stress paradigm to put on people, it's let's create something that's potentially life-threatening, that you don't know if you're exposed to it, and it keeps going on in this unpredictable way. That is an equation for stress. And when we're all trying to adapt and work through it, it's created a lot of difficulties for us all. So you might want to write down just on your own, or put it in the chat if you want to, but just the 5 most important stressful things about the pandemic that you're dealing with or have been dealing with. This can help you to just start to identify what really is the most difficult things that we've had to manage, or that you've had to manage. And that can help in terms of planning strategies to address those things, versus I think we've been a lot in sort of a reactionary mode for many months. And we need to get sort of on the front end of things, especially as we move forward to, I believe, a better outcome now with the vaccines and so forth. So burnout is a component of stress or an outcome of stress a lot, that we do need to take into consideration whether people are experiencing this. And one of the things that goes with burnout is this sense of vital exhaustion. And again, as I mentioned before, when we have sleep issues, this can then kind of intersect with our work life, the challenges of our work life. I know many healthcare providers, for example, are experiencing severe burnout. And even in academia, in secondary education, post-secondary education, teachers, faculty have struggled with these issues. And so this may be your experience, may not be, but vital exhaustion, severe fatigue that's pervasive, and also this sense of detachment from work or depersonalization from work. In clinical settings, we see this where providers feel distanced from their patients, from their clients. They're just not feeling connected. In other settings like academia, teaching becomes a lot more arduous. It's just not rewarding as much as it usually is. There might feel like just a detachment from students, or students may feel this as well for experiencing just the learning process can be very, very difficult, especially remotely. I think we've gotten a lot better about that. Things have moved forward, but still, these are difficult times. And then also, this leads to a personal crisis for people around efficacy, being good at what you do. Thoughts come through for people. I'm just not good at this anymore. I'm not an effective teacher. I'm not an effective physician or nurse or whatever the case may be. It's a challenge for people. And so this can create basically a burnout crisis for people. And it may feel like this. So what can be done to win the battle of the COVID burnout experience? So I'm not an all negative kind of guy here. I want to promote some strength and resilience, of course. And so one is to realize you are in a battle. It's important to step back and go, okay, I've got to have a plan here to manage this. I can't just keep reacting to things. And one of the most important things that we can do is create a self-care plan. And this includes thinking about sleep, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. How can you help yourself with your sleep habits and make sleep more effective for you? Moving, physically moving, and how critical that is for our health and well-being. Eating healthy, reducing substance use, social connection. That's been very hard this year because of having to do social distancing, social isolation during the lockdown period, and so forth. We want to promote that social connectivity. It's a big predictor of how people do. Relaxation, how to calm yourself down, and how to unplug. Obviously, we've been so integrated now to technology and to our video screens, our phones. It's almost like nonstop from the time we get up till we're done at the end of the day. I actually even had what's called an optical migraine for the first time in my life during this year. I never even knew they existed, and that's because of screen time. So some of the things we want to do is look at creating a plan for yourself for work, school, life balance. So what does that mean? It means actually, if you're working from home still significantly, setting physical limits for work or school versus home. For example, setting it up so work is only done in a certain area of the home, whereas other areas are specifically designed for family and self-care. So what's happened for a lot of people is they've blended all that together. They work at like I do actually, which isn't great. I work at the dining room table where we eat. Some people work in the living room. They work maybe even in the bedroom. And so then we've got these sort of blurred boundaries between where your body and your mind goes to relax and to be in a different frame from when you're actually working. So I've worked with other people. It seems to be very helpful to actually set up some physical limits where you don't do things in different areas so that you can create those boundaries. The same thing goes for school and work time versus family time versus self-compassion time. You need to actually structure those time frames so that, again, you're not just bleeding over into all of these different types of things. So if you're trying to work when you're actually trying to hang out with the family, you've got the laptop open, you're answering emails, this creates this kind of constant stress and demand, and it's very difficult for people to do that. So we want to create those boundaries and also get others to help you. We don't have to do everything by ourselves. So reaching out and getting support or just getting advice can be quite helpful. And I'll talk about some ways to do that. One is to take the free grit training, which I'll talk about this morning. So let's talk about resilience, what it is. Resilience is really the ability to recover after serious individual or community level setbacks. We've seen this in our own community with wildfires, with other tragedies we've gone through as a community. But this one is obviously global in the sense of the virus is affecting everyone. And we really do want to push and help support the entire community in terms of being able to respond to the setbacks that we've had to go through during this year. So what shows a resilient individual or organizations? What we know is that organizations and individuals are effective, resilient individuals are effective at identifying what can be controlled, what can't be controlled, and developing strategies to recognize and acknowledge coping successes. So people and organizations that are very successful grab a hold of those things they can move forward on, they can have some control over, And then they recognize we are making progress, we are moving forward with things. I think the town halls, the way the campus has evolved around in-class and remote learning and so forth, we've had a lot of successes, and it's been hard, but we want to recognize those successes. We also know that resilient individuals thrive on turning stressors into challenges rather than viewing difficulties as threats. So we want to change those cognitions between or from having, this could be really bad, we could end up losing this or failing here or doing those things. Instead, turning those into challenges. How can we beat this problem in a way that we come out successful? Having confidence in the ability to manage what's coming at you is also very important. And so is self-care. Having a very good self-care plan to take care of your emotional and physical health is critical. And then persevering when we hit roadblocks. When we do fail, when we do hit a road, a dead-end road, we come up with a way to move forward again and succeed again. And then helping other people cope, not just ourselves. And I know these kinds of events can turn people inward around thinking about our own coping and so forth, which is important, but also helping others, not just ourselves, can be very helpful. So reach out to others and get support and give support. So stress-resistant individuals demonstrate personal control, task involvement, they're very engaged, healthy lifestyle choices, social support, they get social support, they give social support, flexible coping, and then they cultivate and use external resources very effectively. Those who are more vulnerable basically do the opposite. They don't do very well with self-care. They don't eat well, they don't move or exercise, they don't sleep, and they begin to have this kind of negative cycle that really perpetuates physically and emotionally not feeling well. They feel out of control a lot. They have negative behaviors, even maybe being edgy or argumentative that can limit social support. They adopt unhealthy behaviors such as substance use. They increase alcohol and drug use. They maybe stress eat, so they gain weight, and this can create, again, that negative cycle. And then they have rigidity in their coping. They try to do the same things again and again when it's not working. So they struggle with flexibility of that. And then they don't use available resources. So what we want to do is promote individual and collective resilience by promoting positive outcomes for yourself and your loved ones, gain a new sense of meaning in life based on this pandemic, generate how can it teach us something that can be valuable in moving forward in your life, increase importance of relationships, for example, better sense of priorities, and increased belief in your capability to manage things. So when we think about self-care, we need to really focus it specifically on what do we do with these things. So, for example, sleep hygiene. Some of you may or may not know about this. There's some really good evidence about this if we just do these things. One is develop a wind down strategy before bedtime. Make sure that as you're beginning to get into your rhythm of when you actually would go to bed. So some people are late night people, some people go to bed earlier. You want to have that wind down strategy instead of sitting there on your laptop right before you go to bed, taking in information. That's not helpful. Keep the house cold enough when you're going to bed. We do know from the literature that if you reduce the temperature in the house 5 to 10 degrees from daytime, it's helpful for sleep. If you're struggling with waking up, don't stay in bed and get more frustrated. If you wake up in the middle of the night and your mind is racing, if you're able to get to sleep again within 5-10 minutes or something, that's fine. But if you're one of those people that rolls over and over and over for an hour or more, what happens is your mind is associating the bed and trying to sleep with frustration and anxiety, and that becomes a problem. So you want to get up, get some hot tea or do something else that's relaxing, and then go back to bed again. Get enough physical exercise. If you move and get exercise, we do know that increases the capacity for sleep. And then reduce caffeine intake, very important, especially late in the day. Those of you who've been sort of riding the caffeine wave this year, this can create havoc with sleep patterns. So we want to be careful about that. And then find calming activities that can help you before you go to bed, as I said, like a wind down strategy, whether that's calming music, hot bath, reading, or whatever. So many people have their own routines with this, but these can be very helpful sleep hygiene ideas. We want to think about moving more. A lot of people have been sitting on Zoom calls and team calls over and over and over all day long. you want to try to change that. For example, in my own work, I've worked with my team saying I want to do about 25% at least of our meetings moving. So I've started having meetings walking on the treadmill at home. I've had what I'm calling walkie-talkies with people socially distanced on the trail, the Santa Fe Trail. Whatever it takes to move more, do it. So taking even 15 minutes to get outside, walk around the block, breathe some fresh air, see the trees, this can have a big effect on your mind and your body just in terms of not sitting and staring at a screen. So exercise doesn't have to be 30 minutes at a gym. Walk with a friend, do an online yoga class, whatever it takes, but move. And then the second thing, or the third thing, is healthy eating. What we want to do is avoid simple carbs, sugars, obviously sweets, anything that is quickly absorbed in the body and converted to sugar. What that does is it creates these cycles of increased sugar in the blood that then causes a crash down the line, and then you get hungry again, and just creates a rapid cycling that's not helpful to people. So you want to increase your intake of non-processed foods, even if you're doing it a little bit more. Eat more complex carbohydrates versus simple carbs, healthy proteins. And I mean, we all know these things. The question is, why don't we do them? Part of it is when we don't feel well, we're exhausted. It's the middle of winter. We crave that sugar type of input. Unfortunately, that doesn't help us. So we want to try to beat that by putting into place some plans. And then lastly, we want to reduce substances. There's been some evidence of an increase in alcohol intake and substances during the pandemic. We want to try to reduce that if we can, watch that intake because it can create problems as well. Alcohol, for example, can help you fall asleep in some ways, but then it also has a rebound effect when people will then wake up. And so alcohol can be a problem for sleep and so forth and so on. So we want to look at how we're managing our exhaustion and not turn to substances. So I really recommend committing to critical self-care. One other piece after all those other pieces is social connection. The GRIP program, which I'll talk about in a second, is really designed to help you with social connection. So the more you reach out, the more social support you get, the more belonging you feel, the better you will do. So we want to make sure that's happening. And then developing relaxation strategies, not just for going to bed, but in general across the day. How do I calm myself down because I'm ramped up? I'm working as hard as I can. The kids are needing me. My work needs this. Whatever it is, we need to have space at times to just slow down, take some breaths, calm ourselves down. When you do that, you'll feel more efficacious. You'll feel a little bit more energetic. And so finding those relaxation strategies to unwind are important. Here are some apps that you see: the Calm, Headspace, Happify, and then My Resilience. That should be myresiliencehelp.com. myresiliencehelp.com has a relaxation module in it, and it's free. And I recommend you go and use that. Again, make sure you go to myresiliencehelp.com. And then finally, unplug. We need to separate from our phones, our technology, more than we have in the past because we're doing it so often now. So I really recommend you work on that. So if we typically connect 90% of our days with the machine and only 10% with outside world, with our loved ones, our pets, our paintings, our music, and so forth, we're in trouble. So just say no to Zoom, no to Teams, look at other ways to communicate as we move forward. I know they're great. They've helped us during the pandemic, but it can be a problem. So the next thing I want to talk about is something that's very important in terms of the GRIP program and recovering from a disaster is this concept of coping efficacy. How you view yourself and your own capabilities to manage the pandemic is a prediction of how well you're going to do. So you want to make sure that you're feeling empowered, you feel like you have some mastery over what's happening, and that will help you tremendously. This comes from data that I've collected over many, many, many years of all these different types of traumas. And in every case, coping self-efficacy was a strong predictor, both initially and also longitudinally in all of these different settings. From the El Paso County study that's hot off the press, what we show here is that your CSE, your coping self-efficacy for the pandemic, is actually a strong negative predictor with PTSD, depression, loneliness, and stress. It's also a positive predictor of well-being. So here's another example of how important efficacy is in our current situation. So we really want to promote that sense of efficacy. Social support, on the other hand, is also important that we consider as we move forward. And even in situations like we talked about before with nuclear disasters, we do know that social support was a very important factor at then, and it is now. And what we do know, for example, is compassion and helping others and feeling connected to others is critical for how we do. So with that, I'd like to show the next video, please. So that video to me is very moving, and it really kindles in me this sense of how connected we really are. And when we reach out and we provide support for others and we care about others, we do better ourselves, and they obviously do better. So I found this form that you see now online from this group called randomactsofkindness.org. It's a great organization out of Denver. And it's a wonderful form because on the left side, you just list 5 normal day-to-day activities that you do. Go to Starbucks, go to do whatever you do. And on the right, how can you interact or infuse actually that activity with some element of kindness to someone else? And I love this form for that purpose. And so you might want to think about how to do that. And I would guess if you do that, you're going to see a change in how you feel. So when we think about other care, we want to really think about how do we do those random acts of kindness. And why is social support, again, important? Well, we know from the data that we just got from this region is that, again, social support or a sense of belonging during COVID is negatively correlated with PTSD, with depression, with loneliness, of course, and with stress, and positively associated with efficacy and well-being. So the more connected, the more belonging you feel, the better off you're going to do. So we want to make sure efficacy and social support are primarily driven into how we're self-caring, how we're caring for others. Well, one way to do that is the GRIT program that we've developed. We put together this GRIT program in April of, well, end of March, almost a year ago, and launched it in April. And it's gone great guns. We're very happy with how it's done. But really what it is this combination of how do we integrate social support, helping people learn how to be a social support coach, a real resilience coach for people they love in their social networks already, so your friends, family, and so forth, and how do you promote a sense of efficacy in those people so we can get 2 things happening at once. We're promoting a sense of empowerment in the people you care about, and you're also feeling more connected to them, which is going to help you and them. So that's what the GRIT program was designed to do. And you can find out more about the GRIT program at grit.uccs.edu. And it's all free. It's a 5-hour training that you can do. You can do it at your own pace. You go online, you sign up, and you can have access to the training video, and you get a workbook, and you just do it on your own time. And it can be extremely helpful for training you on some skills on how to actually do these support calls, these support interactions with the people you love. So what's happened since we signed it up and got it going in April is that we've had now over 2,000, I think we're close to 2,300 signups today. We're over 1,100 in El Paso County alone. We're in 42 other states, 8 countries, including the US, and everybody you can imagine has signed up for this. People who are, for example, working in the Postal Service, people who are, working in hairdressing and beauty areas. We've got military, we've got police. It's really been the broad range of individuals across the country and the world, actually. And the type of trainings we have available now, so we launched the community training initially, and then we saw the need for one for education, schools, and so forth. So we actually put together a training that has a key component of three around me in the education training, and that's designed to create teachers, staff, coaches who can then learn these skills and then be available for students and the students' families in different settings. I think we could do the same thing at the university level, and what I hope is that people will feel compelled to actually take these trainings, at least one of them. You don't need to do them all by any means, and get that skill base so that we can promote resilience within our own community. We also created a Grit Lead program for small business leaders and nonprofit leaders, and that we put out, I think, in July. And then we came up with some funding from the CDPHE, the Public Health Department for the state, a Grit for Health program for healthcare workers across the state. And that's actually launched and is now available and has been taken up in areas across the state and actually outside the state. And then now we're developing with some colleagues down at the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute in Dallas, a program for first responders and military for the same concepts. But I love this Winnie the Pooh little segment here because it really does explain what's at the core of grit, which is a friend is someone who helps you up when you're down. And if they can't, they lay down beside you and listen. And so really being there and available for people is what the GRIT program is about. This shows you the map of what states we're in across the country and the different other countries we're in, including most, if not all, the English-speaking countries, excluding Africa. We're trying to get some connections into Africa where English is the primary language. And then also Germany and Brazil recently, which is interesting, obviously, since English is not their primary language. So I'm curious how they're using the training there. So in the training, we have 4 or 5 actual core principles based on this article that came out in 2007. One is in a disaster, what we want to do is promote a sense of safety in people. They want to feel safe. So we talk in the training about during the pandemic, how do we promote that sense of safety? And we get into that pretty specifically. Physical and mental calming, we teach people how to do that. Connecting with other people, well, that's the whole point of the GRIT training to begin with. And then hope for the future and a sense of self-efficacy and collective efficacy. So the entire training is built off of these 5 core principles. So when we think about what we're doing with this is we're providing support directly to your natural social connections. What's great about that is that often with crisis counseling in a pandemic or in a disaster, there's always a barrier between the crisis counseling team, which we have in Colorado Springs through Diversis Health, previously called Aspen Point. They have 4 specific counselors who are available in the community, but that's 4 people for 750,000+ people. That's not enough. And so we really want to build out that network of people who can use their own relationships in this way to be supportive and promote resilience. So you can also obviously use these grit skills that are trained in the program for future major events or even minor events that may affect your family or your community. So if we had another fire, for example, obviously these skills will be transferable. And what is a grit coach then? A grit coach is somebody who supports and motivates another person who may be struggling with the stress of the disaster or the pandemic. What they are not is they are not a mental health provider. You are not getting training to be a mental health provider at all. You're being trained on how to be a support person. So there's a very difference with that. And we talk about that in the training, that a coach can help an athlete who's rolled an ankle, for example, and needs ice versus somebody who's gone through more severe, an ankle break or something like that. So who do we help? Well, again, we talked about in your own social networks, friends, colleagues, and so forth. And who might these be? Well, a family member who's recently withdrawn or seems to be isolating. A lot of people have been struggling with this, and we saw that 60% are feeling lonely. Showing signs of stress, if somebody that you know is, that's just not you, you're being more edgy than normal, reaching out to those people. Somebody who's not sleeping, as we've talked about, or is super exhausted. Somebody who's working in a high impact job, such as first responders, healthcare workers, small business owners. I think faculty who've been working nonstop to try to create a powerful and meaningful learning experiences, that's frontline stuff. So they're under high stress. Someone who's already had a significant stress before the pandemic. So they maybe were going through a chronic illness or a job change in some way or a divorce. That can be somebody who really needs support now. Or somebody like a single parent, which is really tough to be managing stay-at-home orders, working with their kids at home, trying to deal with financial challenges and so forth. So what do we do with it? What we do with Grit is we actually have 5 things that people do. First, we teach people how to make that initial connection. Second, how to ask questions of the person to sort of see how they're doing. Third, how to identify coping strengths and resilience. So again, this isn't just opening somebody up and having them share. It's actually focusing on their strengths and resilience. How do we add to those strengths and resilience? So we actually teach specific strategies for that. And then we review, summarize, discuss action steps that the person can take to keep doing well or improve. And then how do we give resources specifically to help them? Some of those resources that you may want to look into include Headspace, as I mentioned before, Happify. For resilience, we have myresiliencehelp.com. In El Paso County, you can use the Silver Cloud program, which is through the grit.uccs.edu. So there's a number of different apps. Calm is a great app for this. So those are available and free. The myresiliencehelp.com looks like this. Again, it's been customized to COVID, and there's also a Spanish version that you can use. So what else is available? So support from the Hill Institute, if you are struggling with grief and loss, we are offering through the Veteran Health and Trauma Clinic on second Wednesday of each month from 3:30 to 5, a drop-in loss and grief support group. So that's available. If you have questions, you can reach out to Lisa Decker, ldecker@uccs.edu. We also have Resilient Families Academy in 2021 coming. Starting in March, we will have a program for people to help them deal with their kids and to have a resilient family. And these are the topics that are covered over the 7-week course. Again, that's free. And then lastly, we have creative arts programming that's happening right now, starting on March 29th. There'll be 6 weeks where people can work on musical expression, writing, kinesthetic work, visual arts. And if you're interested in that creative side, you can reach out to Catherine Dosh, kdosh@uccs.edu. Also, if you're struggling with more significant feelings of sadness or depression, anxiety or others, if you're a student, you could definitely reach out to the Wellness Center at 255-4444. If you need more immediate assistance, if you ever feel like things are getting beyond what you can manage, there's a walk-in clinic at 115 South Parkside Drive that is available 24 hours, or you can just call 1-844-493-8255, and that's an available 24-hour hotline. So these resources are available. So the GRIT program, what we do know is that 90% of our coaches report that the training helped them with their own coping. And right off the press with the data, we do know that those who were in our data that actually did the training were significantly more healthy mental health-wise and well-being-wise than those who hadn't gone through the training. So grit.uccs.edu, I hope you can go there and look at what we have to offer. It's all free, and see if that might work for you to help you. So I'm going to end the slide deck now and answer any questions.
Dr. Benight, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Looking at the responses coming in, multiple people were saying thank you. So on behalf of everyone, thank you for taking the time today to share these great resources with us. And thank you, Chancellor, for dedicating some time on today's town hall for this very important information. So this is great. We do have about 10 minutes left in our time together, and we do have a whole bunch of questions, Dr. Benight, that came in for you. We obviously won't get to all of them here, but let's start with a few of them and see where we end up here. So the first question from one of our viewers, Dr. Benight, if we could only practice one resilience strategy every day, what would it be?
Well, I think that's somewhat individual based on how somebody is feeling and what they have access to. But I'm a strong believer that physically moving is probably the most helpful thing you can do, because we know that that'll help with sleep. It'll help with your cognitive capacity. If you're just getting fresh air and moving your body, we do see so many benefits from that. So I would recommend people just get up and move and stop sitting and staring at a screen for 10 hours a day, if that's what's happening for you.
Yeah. Exercise, that's excellent. All right, next question. So you talked about the pandemic being a long term, but what techniques do you find most useful in coping with the stressful situation in real time? So something happening, right now. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think what I would recommend for people is to be able to practice some calming breathing techniques that can just be 3 deep breaths, for example, closing your eyes and just sort of allowing your body to de-escalate a little bit, can help provide clarity in what you're trying to manage, what you're trying to deal with. And even sometimes doing that and taking a break to walk away from whatever that situation is, if you can do that, then you're combining kind of moving your body a little bit, changing your situation, taking some breaths, and then being able to kind of get yourself recentered a little bit. That can be very, very helpful for people versus being in that sort of reactionary mode where you're just responding to whatever the stressor is that's hitting you at the moment.
That's excellent. So you touched on this throughout your presentation, but hopefully we can reiterate a little bit. So having the research and information on stress, loneliness, and sleep disruption, what are we actively doing to support our students, staff, and faculty here at UCCS's campus related to all these?
Well, so a good example, we did receive some funding from the President's office to provide support for our faculty, staff, and students. And there's been a lot of initiatives around that through the Wellness Center for mental health support on campus with Dr. Altalia, and as well as other, the medical side of that from the Wellness Center. And then also the Veteran Health and Trauma Clinic. We've been offering, as I loaded up on the screen there, several options for people. We are available as a resource, both for clinical support as well as other support. So I think there's a lot of outlets on campus right now that are available. Plus, the Colorado State Employee Assistance Program is available for faculty and staff. So, there are a lot of resources out there. The key is to get plugged into them and be able to reach out.
That's excellent. So a couple more questions here for you. So again, they thank you for the information you're providing. The question is there a template or worksheet that you would recommend that could help with folks walk through how to create this self-care plan that you talked about? I know you talked about some resources at the end of your talk, but maybe reinforcing a couple of those resources.
Yeah, sure. So what I'd really recommend on that is if you have a chance to just write out specifics.
Oh, it looks like Dr. Benight's froze up on us here. So, Chancellor, there was a question for you. We had a number of questions come in, so maybe if Chip can maybe reset his thing and come back in a minute or so. But the question, not related to Resilient, but related to the campus, so we'll change topics just for a little bit here. Talk about summer a little bit. So you talked briefly in your remarks about fall, but in your mind, what does campus look like for summer? Are people been coming back to work? So have you had any thoughts around that, or can you share a little bit about summer?
Great. So Chip, we're doing a lot of thinking about this return to work piece. In fact, I have activated our cabinet to reach out to our campus citizens to start thinking about forming a task force called Future of Work, because I think that's going to be important. So I'm collecting a lot of data on that. We're going to have the task force look at that. And my hope is that we just don't go back to what we used to. Let's kind of evaluate what did we learn during the pandemic and how best can people contribute no matter where they are. So it's going to be not the same thing fits for everyone, So I'm hoping that this task force will give us some strong recommendations. So stay tuned. We are doing a lot of thinking around this. There's a lot of interest, not just on the campus, at the system level, and even at the regions level. So I think this is an opportunity for all of us to kind of work at it and come back with good solutions that actually benefit the campus as we move forward.
That sounds great. Thanks, Chancellor. Looks like Dr. Benight's screen came back to life here, so we appreciate that. So, Chip, I see you're still on mute there, but let's go to one or two more questions for you here. So, a lot of great information that you provided today, and the folks are asking, can we get this slide deck, or where do we access the information that we can share with our students, our colleagues, our family, and friends?
Sure, I will work with the Chancellor's office, and we can find a way to make the slide deck available. And for sure, if people have questions around, setting up a specific plan and things like that, I'm also happy to respond to people too. So you could check, into with me as well. So that'd be fine.
Great. One last question, Dr. Benight, I'll let you look at this. They're asking about how much time is typically needed for the brain to wind down at the end of the day. It feels like it's kind of a catch-22, but you get stressed because you're not checking your emails or checking things that are going on, but you're trying to eliminate that stress and put the phone or tablet away, kind of thing. So some thoughts on helping wind down at the end of the day without adding more stress to your life.
Yeah, so the work will always be there. So I think that the key is to think about putting in other stimuli other than your own thoughts around what work you need to do. So using music, using smells that are calming for you, anything else that you can bring in to your experience that can sort of shift gears, and your body begins to get conditioned to, when I go into my darkened room, for example, to go to bed, I don't have the TV on, I don't open the laptop in the bedroom and things like that. Then your body gets conditioned to actually winding down. So, I think the key is to set up the stimuli in your environment so that it's actually calming, and then you can allow yourself to move into that direction. So.
That's great. Well, Dr. Benight, that brings us towards the end of our time here. We need to leave a few minutes for the Chancellor to wrap it up. But one comment that came in there is our friends from the Ent Center reminded us they do have a lot of great activities going on over there, from the windmill project. If you, to your point, to getting outside and taking a walk, it might be nice to get out over the Ent Center and take a walk and check out that piece of art. And of course, they have the weekly yoga classes and things like that online to help you move. So there are lots of resources around our campus if you keep your eyes open. And to your point, it's not just rushing to the gym and trying to find time, but just getting outside for a few minutes as we get towards spring here. So, Dr. Benight, thank you so much for your tips and information you shared today. As a communication person, I'll commit, I'll work with you, and we'll continue to provide information in the communique each week, maybe or every couple of weeks, with a little resilience tip to help campus get through this pandemic. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
With our last minute or so, I'm going to turn back over to Chancellor Reddy to wrap this up for us. Chancellor Reddy. Oh, you're on mute, Chancellor.
All right, there's too much teaming and zooming going on. Thank you, Chris. I hope you all enjoyed Dr. Benight's presentation as much as I did. Thank you, Chip. Great advice, and thanks for providing great resources for us. Appreciate In closing, please continue to practice the 3 W's, as well as acts of kindness, compassion, empathy. I'm confident that together we will get through anything. So please stay warm, be safe, go Mountain Lions.